Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this CASAS Monthly National News and Updates webinar. My name is Linda Taylor. I'm the Director of Assessment Development at CASAS, and we also have with us today Christine Maines, who is going to be facilitating the chat and also participating along the way. We are recording the session. So if you have to leave early or if you have colleagues that couldn't attend today, we will make it available on our website, and then you'll be able to see it there. All right, so we have a PowerPoint that I'm going to work from, and if you do have questions as we go, please enter them in the chat box. We'll be checking, and Christine will be answering some things, or else we'll pause and see if we can answer something as we go. All right, so here's our agenda for today. We are going to go over just the basics of our new goals test series, and but go quickly through that because we've covered that on other webinars that are also recorded and on our website. Then we're going to, there's a few tips that have come up from various inquiries from the field, and we want to show you some new test reports that have just been put out or are about to be. Then we're going to take a tour of our CASAS website and show you things there that are new or that you might not have seen before. Including the new CASAS Reading Standards 2016 second edition and the training access on our website. Then in addition, the eTest sampler is something we're going to be showing you when we get on the website. So that's what we're going to cover today. All right. So here we go. This is our Reading Goals series. It's there's an appraisal, and that's the 900R. And then there are 4 test levels, 2 alternate forms per level. These are the paper tests where they're in color now. And the overview of what the test forms are is in this chart. The locator is only on eTests. That's 12 items and up to 15 minutes. The appraisal is much longer, and that's if you're using paper testing, you need to use the appraisal, and that will determine both the locator and the appraisal have the same function, which is to determine the appropriate pretest to take, and they will indicate which of these test forms to place in to begin with, 901 to 908. You can see the test timings here on the right where the level A is 60 minutes, but the others, and this is the time that you need to allow. Not all students will take that long, but you need to schedule that much time in case they do need that time to finish. The Math Goals series has 2 parallel forms, and parallel forms at 2 different levels, and as well as an appraisal. And here's the chart for that. It is the AB is the 913-14, the CD is the 917-18, the locator is the 104M instead of R, and the appraisal 900M. And you can see there's 60 minutes maximum allowable time for the AB and 75 for the CD level. There are a few things I just want to mention about these 2 series. One is for the math. We have slightly updated the math blueprint. That is the content blueprint, and it's on the website. I'll show you in a bit where that is, but we did a little bit of refinement of the content, and so these percentages have changed somewhat. But this is one view of it where you can see the content domains for math. You can see what percentage of each test form is there at each level. And then this is the relationship to the college and career readiness standards. In the new math series, the math goals, you must make a calculator available, and if you're using the eTest version that there's an icon in the top right. Looks like a calculator. When you click on it, this pops out. So that is how it works in eTests. If you're doing paper testing, you would need to provide a physical calculator. Here we have, again, this is on the website, and I'll show you where later, but these are the NRS levels for ABE and ASE, and the Reading Goals series is only approved for ABE and ASE. If you're for your ESL students and if you're using CASAS, you should still be using the Life and Work Reading and the Life and Work Listening 980 series. So nothing has changed for ESL, but for ABE as of July 1st, you need to be using the Reading and Math Goals series, and these are the ABE, ASE, NRS levels and the score ranges on the right. Here we have the grade level equivalents. If you need them to communicate with your training programs or other referrals that you're making, so you can see on the far right it lists the grade level and the score ranges, and that also relates to the NRS levels. So we have that for reading. This is for math. We did adjust these recently. That's why I'm showing them to you, because if you looked at these a couple months ago, please take another look because they were updated in the last 6 weeks or so. If you need, these are the score ranges for ESL. As I mentioned, you're going to keep using Life and Work Reading and the Listening 980, and these are the NRS levels for ESL. All right, here's something new to share with you today that by popular demand, we have now published self-scoring answer sheets for the Reading and Math Goals appraisal. That's the Form 900R and 900M. So they both appear on this appraisal answer sheet, and you can get a set of 25 for $49. That's the code to order them. They're very handy because you don't have to refer to the answer key. There's the scores, the markings come through, and you can just open it out and see how to score it very quickly. So if you're interested in that, you can now order that on the website. Another thing about answer sheets I want to share with you is that if you're doing, now this is only if you're doing paper testing and scanning into TOPS Pro Enterprise. So if you're just doing paper testing and you're not doing scanning, you can ignore this next part, because the answer sheets you're using are not probably these TRUS 19, and this does not apply to you. But if you are scanning and paper testing, the TRUS 19 answer sheets are what you do need to use. The old ones, the TRUS 16, cannot be easily used after this December. The new ones are also brown. That's another way to know if you're affected by this. So if you are using brown answer sheets to scan and they're TRUS 16, you should order the TRUS 19, which you can use now and into 2020. If you have a whole lot of these old ones, you can just email tech support at CASAS, and we can show you there is a way to use them. It takes a few more steps in TOPS Pro Enterprise, but we can show you how to work it out. All right, a few miscellaneous tips I wanted to share with you, or things that have come up kind of often in our inquiries to CASAS. One is that some students may not be comfortable with the on-screen calculator when they're taking math goals. So if that's the case, it's fine with us if you want to give them a physical calculator, a handheld one. And on our website, on the math goals page, there are all kinds of FAQs, and in there are specifications for the different types of physical calculators that we allow. And among those are the ones that you may be using also for any of your high school equivalency tests, like the GED, the HiSET, or the TASC. So those are all usable, and you can, in other words, also use them when you're giving the tests through eTests. Something else that we're often asked is about what happens if the student needs more time and is not getting an accommodation, so you've not extended the time, but doesn't finish the whole test within the maximum allowable time that I was showing earlier, what happens on eTests is that when that maximum allowable time is reached, the eTest software knows it, and it will allow the student to finish the question that they are working on. Once they hit submit, then the software will automatically end the test. So that's what happens in eTests. If you're doing paper testing, just a reminder that the same principle applies, that when the time is up, you can allow the student to finish the question they're working on, but after that you should take their paper, their answer sheet and test booklet and finish. That's when they would finish. All right. Another thing that has come up and we'd like to remind you of is that we do recommend that if you can, to have at least one touchscreen device in your lab or however you do your e-testing. This is really useful for students that are not familiar with computers, or if they need an accommodation where a touchscreen could be helpful for them. It's easier for them to enlarge the screen if they have low vision or other needs where they need the screen enlarged. So even if it's just one computer, of course if it's an iPad, that's obviously a touchscreen. On Chromebooks, you can get them as touchscreens as well. They're just a little more expensive, but just to have one or a laptop or even a desktop monitor, they do come now with touchscreen capability, and they're not as expensive as they used to be. So please do look into that as a way of making the testing experience more comfortable for all of our test takers. Another thing that we hear sometimes is that and it's not very often, but it can happen, that there may be slow loading of the test prompts and the graphics. Now, this is normally a problem of internet bandwidth. So the first thing you ought to do, if possible, is to increase your internet bandwidth. Hopefully that will take care of the problem. If it doesn't, one thing we could suggest is to look into the usage of the internet in your agency at that time of day, and if there's any way that you can reschedule and perhaps do your testing at a different time of day when it's not so busy, that can also help. So that's just a tip for dealing with that issue if you have it. Wanted to share with you a couple things, and I know this won't apply to everyone, but in case you do have these needs, and just to let you know that we do try to be as responsive as we can be to field needs as they emerge. One thing that we are currently working on is to make it easier in TopsPro Enterprise to share client data from one agency to another. So, for example, if a one-stop, or that is a Title I WIOA agency that does intake, does the pre-testing, and then a student, if they need it, is referred to training in a Title II program. That's one scenario where it would be, of course, much better if the student is not tested again when they get to the Title II program, so how to share that data. And so we're coming up with a streamlined process to do that, where the Title II program would be able to ask the student where they were tested before, get the name of that agency, and then be able to search within TE to request to pull that data, request that agency to pull the data from there, so to avoid retesting unnecessarily. Another expanded functionality that we are currently working on is to increase the ability to use what we call a special program as a field that already exists in TE, but we have had requests from programs out there who have multiple sources of funding. For example, they do Title II, but they also have a youth corps or some other kind of special funding source, and they would like to be able to track students separately within those funding sources in order to see how many test units are being used by each program. So we're looking into, and we're actually developing ways for you to be able to identify students according to these special programs that you would identify, and then generate reports so that you'd be able to track the usage. I see there's a question here. I've noticed that invalid tests are not indicated on the eTests online test chart after a testing session is over. Can this be changed? Okay, we'll look into it. Thank you for the question. I'll definitely pass it on, and we'll see what we can do. All right. Now, moving into eTests and Top Pro Enterprise, I just want to remind you, and this may be new to some of you, but in case you need it, just wanted to emphasize what are the differences between basic online implementation and what we call enhanced. And so with basic implementation, which is what we call a WTU, you get a personal score report at the end of the test, and then you get all the individual student reports. One of those, which is probably most commonly used, is the individual skills profile. Then as far as competencies, you get an individual level student competency performance report. And one thing that's coming soon is that we are adding to what you get with basic access, the content standards report for an individual student. And the reason we're doing this is because with the new reading goals and math goals series, the content standards are much more important now than the competencies in terms of what's being measured and what we would like you or teachers and students to be able to know about how they did. So we felt it was important to add this to the mix of reports that you can get in the basic access, and so that will soon be available, again, at the individual student level, but the content standards performance should be available soon. You can get the next assigned test as a report that you can look at or print out, but you, of course, that's also that functionality is built into eTests and TE, so that when a student signs on for a post-test, the program automatically provides the appropriate next test. But you can get that report as well. There are reports about test administrations, how many you've given, how many are left. You can export to a third-party system with this basic access. You also get the test history that includes things like the test form, the test date, and these other aspects. So that's with the basic. Now, if you would like enhanced access, and I'm going to show you when we go to the website some of the things that you can do with enhanced access, but one of the major differences is that you get class reports. So that would be for content standards or competencies. And then we have a new class report that is, I don't know if it's quite available yet, but it's coming on very soon, is a test score overview, and I'm going to show an example of that in just a minute. You can also do more in terms of monitoring your program effectiveness at the class, site, and agency levels with different kinds of data reports. You can drill down the data into individual student level or different specific fields within the software. You can have customizable listers. You can do queries of various things that we call ad hoc reporting. And if you want, you can look at what your agency looks like, or even at a site level in terms of the kinds of reports that the state provides to the feds. So these are the things that you would get with enhanced. Now, so here are some of the things that are different. And just to point out that these content standards and competency reports are very similar. If you've been using CASAS before but now switched over to the goals series, you know, there's more that's similar than that's different, but there are some things that have changed. So I'm going to try to show you what's different, including some of these new reports that that I was mentioning. One is, and you may have seen this already, that this is the personal score report that appears at the end of a test, and you can customize it in the back end. but we tried to really give it a facelift and make the most important information much more obvious, so that, you know, the main thing you want to know is what's the scale score. So it's in green, it's big, it's right there at the top. So that's the most obvious information now that you can see for the student. And if you look down below, you can see on the left that we changed the thermometer. Well, first of all, you can see where the 232 fits in on that scale. And we, instead of putting the CASAS levels, A, B, C, D, E, we put in the NRS levels, in this case A, B, E. So NRS levels 1 to 6 for A, B, E, ASE. And since this is a reading goals test, 907R, we put the cut points for those NRS levels for this reading goals series. So the student can now see that they're about halfway through this NRS level 4. They have an idea that that's their next goal to complete the level is at 238. They have a 232, so it really gives them a sense of where they stand in terms of completing that level. And here, of course, is the descriptor that shows you or tells a little bit about what a student can do when they have a score of 232. All right, the next, this is this test score overview that is a new report. And what it does is shows you at a glance how students are doing in the same modality. So in this case, it's reading. This is an ESL class. You can see they've taken different test forms. But because the scale scores are comparable across test forms, you can see when you order this report, and it does, the default is to sort the results by scale score, so that you can see that you have a student who scored 205, although of course it was a diamond score. You can see that means that they might have scored higher, that they scored the highest possible score on the 81R, so they might actually have a higher score than 205. But nonetheless, that is the lowest score in your class. And then you have another couple students who hovering around 210, 212, but that's quite a bit higher than the 205. Then you can see there's some that are, you know, at the high end at 222, 220. So this can help with doing groupings, with seeing if a student might need to go down a level or up a level, and just having a better sense of where your students stand in relation to each other in terms of their reading scores. We've also, if you want, you can see the NRS level that relates to these scale scores, as well as the grade equivalent. So we hope that this can really be helpful. You know, teachers can often be a bit overwhelmed, especially if they're part-time and they're trying to digest a lot of detailed information that, you know, you can get from other reports. But this report is a simpler report that just gives them at a glance how their students stack up in terms of reading. And of course, you can get these in the other modalities. The individual skills profile, we have added the CCR standards tables for reading and math goals. So, and just to review that we do provide reports in terms of content standards, in terms of competencies, and in terms of task areas. And for this particular example, it's a beginning level example, but nonetheless, the basic skills content standard is the academic skill measured, and in this case, it's locate detail, the competency here, and all of our items are still in a competency context, even though the focus, as I was saying earlier, is more on content standards. But here it's read an activity schedule on this phone calendar. And then the task area is to read a chart, which is task area 2. So you'll see these aspects in our reports. But for the new goals series, this is the reading goals CCR report, content report, and it's a summary where you can see vocabulary, you can see reading comprehension skills, and the 2 subcategories there, and also which CCR standard they relate to. Then the 3rd category is higher order reading skills, And these are the subcategories we can report out on and related anchor statements. So this chart is something that is now included in the individual skills profile if someone takes the reading and or math goals tests. And so this particular student took a 917M and a 907R in the goals series. This information is similar to what we've had before, but what's new here is these CCR reports that are now the default reports for the goals series. And here's that chart I just showed you, and it has also the number of items that are in each of these categories, as well as the percent correct. And this is for this individual student. And then we can see the math version that has the domains, category domains, the number of items in each category, and the percent correct. Now, at the very bottom of your screen, I hope you can see, there is also the likelihood of passing information. And for this student, we have the high set information and for reading. So the student got a 248 in reading on the reading goals, and with that score, they have a 78% chance of passing the high set subsection on language arts and reading. This you can see this a little bit better here because the student only took reading, so there it is a little more clearly. We are just about to put out the GED scores, and the math report may actually already be out, but high set reading and math report information is available, and we are evaluating the GED study results right now and hope to be able to make that available soon. In the meantime, you could look at the high set information and get an idea if you're using the GED or the task. Here's a question on the individual skills. Can the high likelihood of passing? Yeah, you can definitely go back into the settings for TE, and you can take that off as an option. Absolutely. Now about the content standards reports. There's the individual one, there's the class one that's indicated by the word summary in TE. And one thing that's new in the goals series is that we've only coded one content standard to each test item. So this is going to make the reports a lot more streamlined and easier to interpret and use. Now, how do you get there in TE? You go to reports, go down to test results, then you go down to content standards, and then you can choose the individual or the class report. So here is the student level. This is reading, and you can see it's the 2016 version that we're referencing. So for ESL, you're still using the 2009 version of the CASAS reading standards, but for the reading goals, we're using the 2016 second edition version. And you can tell that when it says RDG, that means it's the 2016 version. So this is the numbering of those standards. Then you can see how many items are on the test. This is a 906R for each of these categories, and then the percent correct for the student. So you can see it's a lot shorter list than it used to be because, as I said, we're only coding one one standard per test item. And so in this case, you can see this student, there were 3 items in this category, and this student didn't get any of them right, so that's something you ought to work on as well as, whereas, in reading 4.6, there was only one question there, and so the fact that they didn't get it right is perhaps less telling, but still, you can see they didn't get it right, but it's only one question, so you should be taking that into consideration when you evaluate the results. Here's a class level report of 13 students, and it shows the percentages for the whole class. So this reading standards 2016 second edition is on the website, and please do take a look. We recently did put up the second edition, which has now the dots, and it has a few other changes. It's organized. You can see in red that those same categories that we looked at that are in the individual skills profile. So it's very much aligned to how the test is organized as well in terms of content. And this is just a snippet from there from the new reading standards, where you can see the standard number, the standard itself. We have now indicated what CCR standards it's aligned to. And then on the right, at the top, you can see the ABE levels, 1 to 6, the ESL levels, and it's interesting, if you haven't noticed this before, that this is how they relate to each other, that the ESL level, NRS levels, start lower and end lower than the AB levels, whereas the ABE levels start at it's not exact, but approximately at ESL level 3, and then go up to higher than ESL level 6 by 2 levels. So we put in the dots for both ESL and ABE ASE, and that indicates which levels these standards are appropriate for. I see we have a question, a couple questions. I've noticed if a participant has scored low in a subject area, sometimes the grade level is K. K is kindergarten, which I hate to say, but that's what it is, below first grade level. So it's not a wrong score, it just means it's a low score, unless it's an asterisk score. And then, so hopefully that will answer your question. If you would like to ask more about it, just email us and we can get into more detail about that.
Linda, Linda, this is Christine. There's also a follow-up question to that about if you should retest the participant at that point or on a different level test.
Yeah, well, it depends on whether the student got an accurate range score on that test or an asterisk score. So if they got an accurate range score, you don't have to retest them. That's a good score. It may just be that they're at a low level and they're at a K because that's their level, they're low. But on a CASAS level A test, that can be fine if it's an accurate range score. If the score was an asterisk, that means that it was not a valid score. It was below the accurate range, and in that case, you would need to retest the student. Okay, back to our PowerPoint that we have competency reports for individuals and classes. And again, and this is different for the goals series than for the life and work, we have only coded one competency for each set of test questions. Again, it makes it easier to interpret and use, more meaningful because there's more items to each competency. And I'm going to show you something called competency category that can make it even easier. So here's how you get there. Again, reports, test results, but now competency performance. Here's an individual student. So here's the 906R. You can see that the first 4 questions are coded to the very same competency, 4.2.5. So that's one set of items that all have the same reading passage. Then the next set of questions is the next 4 questions that are all coded to 4.4.3, and the next one, etc. So really, these 3-digit competency level is not so necessary because you're getting the same information. So you can, in TE, search on the competency category. That's only 2 digits, and you're going to get similar information, and it's a much neater view of these results. So again, this is hopefully a much more streamlined look at the content as far as competencies. Again, the competencies are less important in reading goals and math goals than they were in life and work. Okay, now on to just, and we're going to go soon to the website. I'm going to show you these sample items that we're very excited to say are now in eTest format, and we call it the eTest sampler. And there's a student portal that you can, a link that you can share with students so they can go right to it. And it shows the new format in eTest with all of our HTML enhancements. So we're going to go to the website. We're going to look at some of the eTests and COPS Pro Enterprise resources there and the new Going Live checklist if you're a new agency to CASAS. We're going to look at how to access training. We're going to look at where you can find some of the information about the goals series that I've been talking about. In fact, I think we'll probably go there first. Then show you where to get the eTest sampler. We'll show you, and maybe you already know, where the recordings and other information about previous national monthly webinars are and the current ones and upcoming ones, and also some other very useful information that's on the CASAS website. So let's now go there. All right, so there is our home page, and there are these tabs across the top. I will point you in the direction of the search box, which you can use. In fact, you can see I last used it to look up scanning. So, you know, or CASAS scanners if you want to know the specs for that. Anything that you type in here, it's a nice shortcut. If you don't, if you can't find something easily on the CASAS website, just type it in. It takes you out to Google, then back again. So that's very handy. Also, let's now go down. You can see these blue tabs on the left. The CASAS catalog is there. We update that when we do have updates after we have printed the catalog every year. We often have new things that become available, and that you'll be able to find if you click here on Order or on CASAS Catalog. And if you go up to the top right, you see that order page. That's a handy way to get there. And let's just go there for just a quick minute here, and we can see there's different ways you can search. And if you want to order those new answer sheets, you would click down here on Order Answer Sheets. Let's maybe just go there, and you can see that these COPS Pro answer sheets, here's that, what I was telling you about earlier, the Student Test Record 2019. These are the new ones. And then for the appraisal, I'm going to go back now. You can also search on ordering by test series here on the right. So if we were to search on math goals, you see on the second column here, math goals, and you wanted to find those new self-scoring answer sheets, they are right here. Self-scoring answer sheet goals appraisal. All right. Also, I do want to mention that we do recommend, even if you're doing eTests, that you get the test administration manual for the series and have one per site available, because there is important information there about testing, administering tests, et cetera, that we would recommend that you have available and on hand. But you do need to keep it secure because it has the answer keys in it. All right. Now, while we're here, well, actually, let's go now back to the home page, and we can let's take a look at the top product overviews. Let's go there, and that's where you can, again, if you want to order, you can. But if you go to assessments on the left, you'll see reading goals, math goals, and sample test items. So let's go to reading goals. And here's some basic information about the series. Here you can see some, there's some PDFs, there's some information about content standards by form. There's the test blueprint, which gives more detailed information about the CCR content. There's a grade level equivalence and FAQs. Sample items you can get there from here as well. I want to show you, if we go to the math goals page, same idea, same information, similar information, but for math goals. And I want to show you the blueprint PDF. I'm going to pull it up. Here you can see this overview of the content where you can see the level A/B and how much these different domains, and then it's in more detail below. We did, as I mentioned earlier, make some recent adjustments to this, so if you haven't looked at it in a while, it's not major, but just please want to make sure that you use the latest version of this. We also, on this page, have the same, comparable information, the grade level equivalents and the sample test items. Now, if you want to get to the sample test items generally, I'm back over on the left side, click sample test items, and then you can get to the ones for life and work reading or listening, and that will take you to the paper format version of the sample test items. But if you click on the CASAS eTest sampler, that will take you right in to the sampler. I do recommend, and I'm not in it right now, that you use Chrome for this. It does seem to work a bit better. But you can see the pink ones are reading, life and work reading for ESL, the reading goals at 4 levels for ABE, ASE, math goals, and then the life and work listening. So you can, it'll take you right in to this eTest format. And we, as I said, if you can give this link, if you look at the top left, see where it says casasportal.org/eTest. You have to have the whole thing. And you can give that link to students, and you can give it to them even before they come for their pre-test, or certainly to prepare them for post-testing, so they can be familiar with the format. With, you can see that we have now plus and minus buttons to easily enlarge or decrease the size of the display or the question and distractors. So I encourage you to look into this if you're not already familiar with it, and use it with your students. Okay, I think in other of these webinars we've gone into more detail. I'm not going to spend time today, but I just wanted to show you where that is. Now if we go back home, we can then get to, one way to get to training and support is up here at the top, and another way is to get to go down here on the left. And I do want to, let's go at the top first, and we can see, and this, if you're using eTests or TE, there is quite a wealth of information here. So if I click on eTests Online Help and scroll down a bit, there are PDFs on a multitude of topics. So, if you're new, of course, you're going to want to look at most of them or all of them. But even if it's been a while and you can't remember about test interruptions, or if you got a new computer lab and you need to register the stations, or if you have new staff, you can refer them here to just download the PDF, and it gives you step-by-step instructions for, with screenshots about how to go through every step of how to do this. So please take advantage of this resource. It's there for eTests. It's going to hopefully take me back there. Okay. There's for TE, you have data management PDFs, and especially as an administrator, you may not have seen that we have guidance for you about how to make the most of what's in the software, and also for teachers. There's some very useful PDFs here. So would recommend that you take a look, and especially if you're considering, remember earlier we were talking about basic access versus enhanced. If we look, I'm going to go back to that TOPS for Enterprise information. You can see that there is a lot of richness here in terms of, for example, this is the one in the Data Integrity Report that you only get with Enhance, and it gives you all kinds of guidance about how to, how you can use it for, how to do it, etc. And if you want to kind of go up in terms of the power of your use of this software, it has a lot more that you may not be aware of that you could use to enhance and refine your use of CASAS. So I recommend that you take a look at that, consider using the enhanced. I'm going to go back now, back to the home page, and then Christine, if you'd like to show them the online training button and how that's been reorganized, and then after that I want to show them a couple other things. So
Sure.
Go ahead, and if you'd like to show them that.
Yeah, I'll actually just talk you through it, Linda. So first of all, if you can scroll up to the top of the home page, you'll see in the right-hand side where it says login or create an account. For those of you who are bringing in new staff, you want to make sure that you have them log on to the CASAS website and create a global account. As they create this account, that will then give them access to the training modules. They cannot sign in for those online training modules without creating an account and a login. And essentially, if you click on the button for Create Account, you can see it's a basic profile, standard process with required fields. Once they have created this new account, they will then receive an email that's automatically generated to the email they listed in the account for the account. And that will be the user and password that they will use to log into the training modules. Linda, you can go ahead and exit out of that and go back to the landing page. So then they will be prompted to log in at a certain point. So if you have a new staff member or you want to add an eTest proctor certification, or you have a change in staff, let's say you may need an additional proctor because one of your proctors left, you would just make sure that they have their login created and their password available, and that they have confirmed that through their email. Then they'll click on the online training button. That's the third button down under Welcome to CASAS. Click on online training. That takes them directly to the online training modules. Now, you can access this by simply typing in training.casas.org if you look up in the in the search bar. For those of you who may be needing to have your staff add a certification, you can scroll down and you'll see the implementation category. So we require that implementation basics training is taken at the agency level. So you need to make sure that you have someone who has taken implementation basics training. In addition, we recommend, in addition to your main point of contact at your agency, that you also have an additional coordinator. That's an eTest coordinator. This is for eTests only, so that eTest coordinator can act at setting up testing sessions, and that's a really important role at your agency. In addition, we recommend that you have eTest proctors, at least 2 proctors. You want to make sure that you check with your agency and your state to make sure that there are not additional requirements. For example, in some states, teachers are not allowed to test their own students, so you'll want to make sure that you have proctors who have an understanding of how the eTests can be, how the eTest sessions can be run. In addition to the implementation basics, the eTest coordinator and eTest proctor, some states require, if you scroll down, some states require recertification. Currently, if you are one of those states or you are someone who is required to recertify every year or every 2 years, you will log into Beyond Implementation Basics. That's that recertification module. It's shorter than the Implementation Basics training. Some of you may have already attended training, for example, in some of your states, where you've used the in-person training completion certificates as well. This is a great feature of our training. If you are a state trainer and you've joined us on this webinar, we do ask that you contact CASAS to let us know. And if you can scroll down, Linda, you can see we have trainers in several states who are actively using this training completion certificate. This is a fairly new procedure that CASAS is using, so that if you have participated in a training in the last 2 or 3 months, you should be using this training completion portal. If you didn't, we may not be aware that you have received a certification in your state. Please be sure to check with your local trainer or your state trainer to make sure that you have certification. If you have any questions about that, you can contact training@casas.org, and one of our training team members will get back to you. So if you want to make changes, there's the Going Line checklist. Linda knew what I was getting ready to do. If you go to forget where the Going Live checklist is, as you move through adopting CASAS, you can go to this training website and click on the Going Live checklist. That's another way to get to it. And that will take you to a page on our website that has live links for every step of getting started with eTests and implementing eTests. This is only for eTest users, obviously. If you are a paper site, paper tests, you only are required to take the CASAS Implementation Basics training and place your order, and you're ready to go. That being said, Linda, if you don't mind going to the training and support button, there is there's one feature under eTests online help that I want to share with you. We've been receiving a lot of last minute requests. Oh no, I'm testing tomorrow. What do I need to do? We actually have that information on the eTests online help. If you scroll down to the help document that says steps for testing day, I love this resource. You just simply download this. And it walks you through the step-by-steps of how to prepare for testing day, the testing sessions, how to save, start, session activity, and then how to prepare for the testing stations. This is a fantastic resource. You get in those moments where you say, oh no, what do I do? I love this resource because it also has a specific script, what you tell your students, what you need to give them. That's a really handy tool. Last but not least, under after the test. This is a really important step under after the test, that you direct your students, step 3, to log out of the testing application. We have several at the proctor station, then out as well. So after the test under step 3, you'll see step 3 says direct students to log out of the testing application when they finish. This will save those calls to tech support. That's very helpful for you to make sure you just have your students log out. Then make sure that you have the testing stations exited. This is really important, step number 6, to exit the testing application, and then the proctor will follow steps 7, 8, and 9. Thanks, Linda, for showing that. That's something that we're seeing as a trend. I would highly recommend that you print this out and have it available to you for every testing day when you're working students through the testing stations. Okay.
Okay. All right. I see there's a little bit of activity in the chat box. And maybe I'll, just to make sure that I can address those questions, I will try to answer them for you. Someone earlier asked, and I responded that, Lisa, thank you, Lisa Gard from Iowa, hi, asked about when the reading goals for ESL will be submitted. And the answer to that is we are planning to submit that for NRS review next October, that is of 2020. Now, the usual amount of time that it takes for us to hear back about one of these NRS test reviews is we normally don't hear until January or February of the following year. That would take us to February of 2021, which also happens to be when the current Life and Work Reading series for ESL officially is, if that's the expiration period, that's when it is no longer, well, it ends. So we have been in discussions with OCTAE, and we understand that they're planning to put something out fairly soon to advise the field about this. So because that timeline is going to be, a challenge otherwise. So in other words, the soonest, somebody asked me privately, but I'll say that the soonest that we would expect to hear back would be January or February of 2021. Sometimes it does take longer for us to hear back from them, or for us to, interact with them. So again, that's sort of all happening right now. We don't have any more specific information. All right. Let's see. All right, let me just go back, if I may, to the website, because there's just a couple more things I wanted to show you. One is going back to the home page. On the far right, middle, where you see what's new, this is where you can see this news and updates webinars, and so you can keep an eye on that. We're going to keep sending out global emails. I imagine many of you heard about today's webinar from that, and it's nice to see that we have a healthy level of participation today, so thanks for joining us very much. But in the future, today's is, as is already happening, but the next one is November 20th, and we may update the topics that we're going to cover next time, and we are planning to do a few other different things. And then if you can see here that the last webinar, which was in September, you could, if you want to, you can listen to that, because that webinar recording is archived here. It's posted on YouTube, and same thing for the August and the July, so et cetera. You can keep going back in time, but I would recommend that you listen to the most recent ones first, because some of the information, as you can imagine, might go out of date. Now, the other thing here that I want to show you, go back to the home page, is, there are a lot of other resources on the CASAS website, and I think we may have mentioned this in our last webinar. I think Christine did, but I want to again point out to those of you who may not have seen that. If you click on Summer Institute, it does tell you when the next one is, which is next June in Orange County. So hopefully, if you can possibly get there, we'd love to have you. And this is telling about it. But one of the very nice little bonus features on our website is, if you scroll down here and on the left, you can see presentations. If you click on that, you can see and take a look at some of the, in fact, most of the sessions that were presented last June. The keynote was amazing. I'll just mention that it was really eye-opening for me. Our keynote speaker, you get the full PowerPoint, but just as an example, the video that she showed of what is happening and the sort of trends and the sort of futurist view was fascinating. So that's something you might want to take a look at. But then there are many, many kinds of presentations, other kinds of presentations here on EL Civics, on WIOA in general, on collaborating, on IELCE and IET, people sharing what they're doing and what's working, what's not, looking at citizenship prep. So you can see there's quite a lot of content here that you are most welcome to take a look at. Another thing, just very quickly, is under training and support. You can see under curriculum management and instruction, here on the left, there are some online modules. Curriculum, see down here, by the way, wanted to mention the content standards, the first tab. This is where you'll see these CASAS Reading Standards 2016 second edition. And if you download that, you'll see the full document. And here's the 2009 ones, which you're still using for ESL. And here are the math ones that you're using for ABE. We didn't change them for the goal series, and here are the listening ones. So these are all very important to use when you're interpreting the content standards reports, because these are the CASAS content standards that these are referencing. Also here, I'm going back on the left-hand side, you can see curriculum modules, and these are some materials that are free, that were developed for developmentally disabled learners, but that have a lot of really nice activities and handouts that a lot of people have found useful. So just to let you know that that's another resource that's here for you to use. All right, also, last but not least, is our instructional, our quick search online, which you can search for materials references. So we've reached an hour, and I want to thank you for attending, and hopefully this has been helpful for you, and look forward to seeing you back on November 20th.